All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Bao Zhang, and I'm here with my colleagues.
Maxwell Clement.
Andy Englesmith.
And I'm Ashley Matich.
We are a team of UX designers and researchers. Today, we will be telling you all about our work on the Guillotine League's fantasy football app. Meet Dan. He loves fantasy football and has been playing for decades. It's the highlight of his fall every year. It's Tuesday morning, and the first thing he sees when he opens his phone is a push notification from one of his favorite apps, Guillotine Leagues. One of his team he manages has been eliminated from the competition, and all of his buddies are teasing him about getting chopped. Even though Dan is disappointed that his team is out, he still has 3 more teams going strong in other Guillotine Leagues and gets started planning his strategy for next week. It wasn't always like this, though. Last year, Dan's relationship with the Guillotine League's fantasy football app was one of love and hate. The Guillotine League's app has been around for 3 years, and by many accounts, it's the most exciting thing to happen in fantasy football in a long time. In fact, one of our users told us that after 25 years of playing fantasy football, they had started to become bored with it until they joined a Guillotine League, which reignited their passion for the game. The Guillotine League style of play was created by a local radio personality, podcaster, and legend in the fantasy football industry, Paul Charchian. The idea came from a caller of his radio show, suggesting a new twist to the classic game of fantasy football. A last man standing competition where every week one team is eliminated from the league, casting the entire roster into a free agent pool that is now up for grabs for the surviving teams to bid on. Across the board, users sing the praises of this exciting style of fantasy football. But as much as the game is loved, the app falls short of users' expectations, with users frequently complaining of an unintuitive interface and unreliable functionality. Now I'm going to hand it over to Max, who will be talking more about the current state of the app and what we learned about how users interacted with it.
Thanks, Bao. The Guillotine League's format is clearly a winner, but it was being limited rather than enhanced by the app. As designers, our work focused on redesigning the Guillotine League's app so that it would enhance the joy, suspense, and friendly competition inherent in fantasy football rather than interfere with it. To better understand how users were interacting with the Guillotine League's app and to identify the biggest opportunities for the app to realize its full potential, we conducted a series of directed storytelling and contextual inquiry interviews, as well as a competitive analysis of similar apps on the market. We learned that users didn't fully trust their understanding of the app or its functionality, and in some cases, they would use the desktop version of the program to complete basic tasks. In other cases, users avoided using the more advanced functions of the app that could simplify their team management process, and instead they engaged in time-consuming workarounds. One user described placing 5 or even 10 different bids to accomplish a task that could have been done in a single transaction if the app were clear and predictable enough to make him confident. We learned that although users loved the suspense created by the Guillotine's League style of play, the app itself did not heighten the emotion or incorporate the fun, playful, and sometimes biting brand that Paul and Roxy have built over the years. We learned that users had to memorize the processes for completing simple tasks in the app, and that even the most experienced users frequently had to search multiple screens to find the information or function they were looking for. Here's a quote from a user struggling to find the current standings in one of the leagues he's in. My assumption would have been that I would click the more button in the bottom right corner, and I knew it wasn't going to be there. And that's what I do every single time I use the app. I click the more button, expecting it to be different. We asked another user how he would bid on an available player bid, and he said, I normally use the website for that. Can I do it in the app? After searching a couple pages, he found the button and exclaimed, I'm going to feel really silly if that's been there the whole time I've been using Guillotine Leagues. Users were unsatisfied with the app, and in-app store reviews, they described it as rushed and incomplete. During our interviews, users gave most features in the app a 3 out of 5 in terms of meeting their expectations. Compounding these challenges is the fact that users are playing for money. Expectations on the reliability and clarity of the app are heightened. And users are less tolerant of mistakes or inconsistencies in this app than they might be for something lower stakes. And now I'm going to pass it over to Andy, who's going to tell us about some of the changes we made to the app to help it better meet user needs.
Thanks, Max. In response to our findings, our team engaged in a two-pronged approach. First, a complete redesign of several key elements of the app to make them more clear and predictable. And second, the development of delighter elements that would engage and inspire users and enhance the feelings of joy, suspense, and competition that they loved about the game already. For example, consider the home screen of the app. In its previous state, it provided limited information and missed the opportunity to invite interaction. The page has no branding and isn't inherently fun. Let's check back in with Dan to see how the new screen is different. It's Saturday, the middle of the football week, and Dan logs into the Guillotine Leagues app again. On the home screen, he starts by swiping through the leagues he's playing in, looking at his current standing and monitoring his free agent budget. Everything's right at my fingertips, he thinks. While he's swiping, he keeps an eye on the chopping block in the middle of the screen to see whose avatars are closest to the guillotine graphic, which will chop one of them and eliminate them from the league. The cute graphic makes Dan smile, at least as long as his own team isn't anywhere near the guillotine. At the bottom of the screen, he compares each of his players' current performance to the corresponding player on the teams about to be chopped. These numbers are updating live and allow him to strategically consider who he might try to pick up in the next bidding process. Dan keeps an eye on these, and the closer he gets to the end of the week, the more excited he is about the players who will be released from the eliminated team. Last year, when Dan wanted to manage the roster on one of his teams, he had struggled to navigate the stats for each player, with the app interface forcing him to decide between being able to see the player name and minimal stats, or many stats, but no player name at all. He always had to double check that he was reading the right number in the right row and column. The light-colored interface made it hard to focus on small text for an extended period of time, and the overall aesthetic felt dated compared to some of the other apps he uses. The new roster screen allows Dan to see the data in a more compressed format. When he scrolls horizontally, the player name remains on the screen, so he's never lost. And the darker color palette lends itself to reading small text. Dan toggles between data from different teams without leaving the screen by tapping on the team's avatars. I didn't used to be able to do this one-handed, he thinks. Now, I don't even have to put down my sandwich. The bidding process that users use to pick up players from eliminated teams has changed a lot since last year. In fact, this is the section that challenged us the most as designers. It's a microcosm of the challenges we faced working with all the different parts of the app. It's a very complicated feature that users can interact with in a variety of ways. It's frequently underutilized and an easy place for users to make mistakes. Compare that to our design, which incorporates new signifiers to guide users' actions and better visibility about what results different actions will bring. During our research, users used words like exciting, fun, interesting, and said, "This is so much easier." On the previous version, there was a link to an instructional video at the top of the page that users admitted to avoiding. This drove our curiosity to discover where the design could infuse the needed instruction and guidance without it fading into the background of the app. This shows up in our new designs with helpful copy to explain the outcomes of their decisions. The new waiver process is different too. Dan appreciates that vague actions like next and back are replaced with more clear terms like pick up and drop. The familiar phrase add backup player conveys meaning the first time he reads it. Tooltips remind Dan exactly how waivers work, and once he's internalized them, he opts out of seeing them again. Bidding used to require so much busy work, thinks Dan, as he reviews the bid summary at the bottom of the screen. Now, even the confirmation screens are more fun. And the color also provides a clear summary of the outcomes for all users. No more going back and forth between his phone and the computer. No more uncertainty. Now, the only stress the Guillotine Leagues app brings Dan is the good kind, the Monday night sweats, where he watches the last NFL games of the week on the edge of his seat, waiting to see if any of his teams will be eliminated this week. Now, Ashley's going to talk about what we'd do if we had more time and what we learned during this project.
Thank you, Andy. Though users had more confidence when using our revised version of the waiver bid process, testing revealed that users didn't always notice or read the transaction descriptions at the bottom of the waiver bid screens. The same was true of the app tutorial. 100% of users opted in to receive this tutorial, stating that since they have money on the line, they would definitely want to read it. But in reality, we saw users skim tutorial screens and miss important information. In response to both of these realizations, we experimented with adding color and weight to keywords and instructions. We'd like to test to see how much of a difference that makes, and depending on the findings, might also want to consider ways to communicate instructions and outcomes non-verbally. Additionally, we'd like to work on the user-to-user messaging features within the app. Many of the users we spoke to said their favorite thing about playing fantasy football was being able to give their buddies crap. It sounds like a lot of fun to us, and we'd love to help them out with that. This project was a great opportunity to apply foundational UX and UI principles, as well as to hone our collaborative skills. Possibly the most important thing we learned during our work is that as a designer of a recreational product, you can't always count on users to take responsibility for understanding how to complete a complicated action. External videos or blocks of text might contain the answers that users are looking for, but in the context of an app being used for leisure, these things just simply aren't consistent with user actions. Working on the Guillotine Leagues app was an awesome opportunity, and we'd like to give special thanks to Paul and Roxy Charchian for their support, Siri Preston, as well as Krista Merrill and Angie Wong for being exceptional leaders, Prime Digital Academy for the education and the opportunity, and of course, our friends and family for their support and encouragement. Again, we are Ashley Matich, Bao Zhang, Max Clement, and Andy Englesmith. If you have any questions about our work on the Guillotine Leagues app, we're happy to connect. Reach out on LinkedIn. Thanks for watching.